Professor Judith Mair. Welcome to the Tourism Matters podcast. Thank you for being here with me today.
Thank you for the invitation.
Yeah, you're welcome. Right, so we're going to kick things off with a couple of quick get to know Judith questions. So, Judith, when you're traveling, which I feel like you do quite a lot of, are you window seat, middle seat, or aisle seat on the plane? Where are you going?
I'm definitely window seat. I'm window seat for a couple of reasons. Firstly, I'm not very tall. And secondly, on a long haul flight, if anyone's going to be disturbing anyone, they're not going to be disturbing me. So that's my choice. I like to curl up and just keep myself to myself.
Do you know, I've not had anyone yet give that as the reason for wanting the window seat. You don't want to be disturbed, but how do you feel about disturbing other people on the way out? You're okay with that?
Yeah, sometimes that happens.
Wow. Okay. Excellent. And tell me, when you are, staying in a hotel and you're at the hotel buffet breakfast, where are you headed in the morning? What's going on your plate or in your bowl, Judith?
Whatever's unhealthiest normally, because I try to eat healthily at home. And then when you see the big buffet spreads, that's your opportunity to have, bacon and eggs, chocolate pastries, all these things that I wouldn't normally eat.
I am 100% there with you, Judith. It's like, I don't know this person when I'm standing at the hotel buffet breakfast. In fact, I don't even normally eat breakfast. But yeah, seeing everything there in front of you, just want to try a little bit of everything.
Yeah.
Do you have a go-to?
Not really. It
No.
depends where I am in the world.
Yeah.
So in Asia, I love all the sort of the soups and noodles that you get at breakfast. In Europe, it's usually things like the cheese and the nice bread.
Yeah.
So yeah, it depends a bit where I am.
Bit of local fare.
Yeah.
All right, Judith. I'm going to hazard a guess here and say that you didn't grow up in Australia.
Good guess. Yes, I am from Scotland.
So can we go back to young Judith? Can you tell me a little bit about your upbringing and schooling, and then sort of what you wanted to do when you finished school? Let's start there.
Yeah, sure. So I come from just outside a town in the west coast of Scotland. The town's called Dunoon, and it's in an area called Argyll, which is basically the south of the Western Highlands of Scotland. So it was quite a countrified upbringing. We had to travel quite a long way for, to go to the big shops, if we wanted to go to supermarkets, or if we wanted to go to Marks and Spencer's, that was a day out. So it was quite different to where I live now in the middle of a big city.
Yeah.
When I was at school, I was generally quite a good student. I enjoyed school, but my thing that I really liked was languages, and I did them quite well at school. So when I left school, I went to university in Edinburgh to study languages. I did I can't even remember the full title now. It's a Bachelor of Interpreting and Translating. And my two languages were French and German. So I did, it's an honours degree. I did my 4 years at university, of which 1 year was spent abroad. I went to Germany for 6 months to speak and practice my German. Wow. And then I actually went to Belgium, to the French-speaking part of Belgium, to speak and practice my French.
Wow.
And I really enjoyed it. It was hard. It's hard to do well in languages.
Yeah.
But I did enjoy it. And when I graduated, I did a little placement in Brussels with the European Union in the translation division, which I also really enjoyed. But it then occurred to me that it's incredibly difficult to get that work as an ongoing career. There are, I learned at university to be the simultaneous interpreters that you see at the United Nations and the European community meetings. But yeah, there's just not that many positions available, and it's extremely hard and stressful. Right. So I decided that maybe I'll just take a little bit of time out and think about what do I actually want to do. And my first job, which was just a casual job, was working in the Visitor Information Centre in Princes Street in Edinburgh. Wow. And I got that job partly at least because I could speak foreign languages, and it's really useful for the visitors to be able to, to ask questions in their own language. Right. But while I was there, I kind of discovered tourism as a possible career and a possible industry. And that's really how I ended up in the industry. I started, my first job after that one was with Visit Scotland, where I worked in the information centre. It was quite a few years ago now, so we didn't necessarily have access to everything on the internet like we do now. So the information centres were a really important way to phone up and get the information that you wanted, or
Yeah.
to get brochures sent on to you, etc. So I spent quite a lot of time doing that. And then I ended up being I guess a convert, if you want to call it that, to the tourism industry as a career path. I went back to university and did my master's in tourism in
Wow.
Glasgow, University of Strathclyde. So
Judith, you're
yeah,
not the first guest I've had that studied languages.
yeah,
Yeah, I think, in fact, you may be the third or fourth. This is seems to be a common thread,
yeah.
which is really interesting and not something I ever would have picked.
There you
Um,
go.
did you go on to study languages because it was something that you were interested in and you enjoyed, or did you have an idea in those early days of sort of what you thought a career would look like?
Um, I guess it was a bit of both. So
Mm.
I, I don't think that careers advice was necessarily that good at school in
Yeah.
those days. So they kind of said, "Well, what are you good at?" And I said languages, and they sort of said, "Go and study languages then." But I
Right.
did have the idea that I might be able to live and work abroad. In I guess I thought perhaps France or Germany or maybe Belgium, Switzerland, Austria, something like that.
And had you traveled much in your childhood?
Um, Not a huge amount
Mm.
in terms of leisure travel, but my father was in the Merchant Navy. And so we used to sometimes travel to other parts of the UK when his ship was in, because he'd be away for maybe 6 to 8 months at a time. But if the ship was calling into a port somewhere in London or whatever, then we would sometimes go
Oh,
down
okay.
there. Yeah.
Wow. Okay. So, after converting to tourism, which I love the term, I'm going to steal that. So you went on, sorry, did you say you went on and did a master's?
I did. Yeah, I did
Yeah.
it master's
Okay.
at
And this,
Strathclyde.
right. And this was in Edinburgh?
No, that was in Glasgow. So I'd moved
Glasgow,
from Edinburgh
sorry.
to Glasgow by then.
Yeah. Yeah.
And after I did my master's, I worked in the tourism industry for about 10 years in visitor centres. And I worked for the Edinburgh Woolen Mill, which it runs a lot of shops, but also runs visitor centres in Scotland, where people can go and find out about their clan history and their tartan and all that stuff.
Oh,
It
right.
was kind of interesting. And then I also worked for I was marketing for a tour operator, a very small niche tour operator that organised tours to the Scottish Islands. Because it's quite complex to do multiple islands just because of the ferries and accommodation availability, etc. So yeah, so I did that, and then I worked for a hotel consortium as business development manager.
Wow. That sounds like quite a breadth of experience over a 10-year period. Yeah, which
Yeah,
is very not unusual at all in the in the
yeah,
tourism
I'm not
industry.
surprised to hear that. Yeah.
Yeah, right. Um, okay, so 10 years sort of working, in the well, I shouldn't probably say in the guts, but I guess it kind of is
Yeah,
working
yeah,
in the
that's pretty much what
industry.
it was.
Yeah.
Yeah.
um, and then what happens after that?
So after that, I had a baby, and I decided that I didn't want to back to work full
Mhm.
time.
Mhm.
And so I thought about going back part time, but I couldn't really find
Mm.
anything that kind of, grabbed me that I wanted to do. And at that point, I had investigated the option of doing a PhD because I'd already done an honours degree and a master's degree. So I did have the qualifications to get into PhD, and I'd always enjoyed university. And, I kind of felt that I had a bit of a home there as well as
Mm.
in the tourism industry. So that's when I did my PhD, which I did part time when my kids were younger. So I
Mm.
started just after the first one was born, and I finished just after he started school.
Wow. Um, if you don't mind answering the question, what age group would you have been at this point?
When I early 30s.
Yeah, okay. Yeah. I just yeah, I can myself am lumped into that. I had a child and then struggled to find part-time, child-friendly work. So I actually went off and worked in events for a while. But yeah, again, you're not my first guest that has had to sort of rethink their career due to motherhood. Yeah. Yeah. So it's lovely to hear these stories that really highlight that becoming a parent or becoming a mother doesn't mean you need to walk away from the tourism industry. Yeah.
No, just
So
change your approach.
yeah, that's right. So you completed your PhD, and what happened after that?
So I finished my PhD also at the University of Strathclyde in Glasgow. And when I finished that, my husband and we had talked about potentially having to move because his job was a little bit uncertain. And it sort of came to this situation where his work was not really going to be continuing and we would have to move somewhere. And he was born in Australia, and we've always had the option to emigrate to Australia. We'd never particularly felt the need to exercise that option, but we decided we would give it a go. And when we eventually made it over to Australia, the children were 7 and 5. It was a bit of a big decision, but
Oh
I
my
mean, we
gosh,
always knew
yeah.
that at the end of the day, Scotland would still be there. So,
Yeah.
if it didn't work out, we could just go home.
Had you been to Australia before?
No,
No.
I know. It was a big leap into the unknown.
Huge. Where did you go? Brisbane, where you are now, or
No, I went to Melbourne originally
Melbourne?
because my husband had some family there, and so that
Right.
made it a lot easier for us as
Yeah.
a
Yeah.
first entry point into Australia.
Wow. All
I
right. So
stayed
you
in
land
Melbourne
in.
for
Oh,
I stayed in Melbourne for 9
Oh,
years and then up to Brisbane
yeah.
after that.
Okay. Um. So you land in Melbourne,
Mhm.
with a 7-year-old and a 5-year-old, and
Yeah,
fairly
possibly not
recent
fully advisable. I'm not sure I would necessarily suggest that people follow my
character
lead there.
building, Judith. Character building.
Well, that's exactly what it was.
Yeah, yeah, I can imagine. I've moved a number of times with my just one son, and yeah, that's enough. And none of them have been to the other side of the world, to a country I've never been to.
Yeah.
um, what was your game plan when you arrived in Australia? Did you sort of get into looking for work straight away, or?
Fairly soon afterwards,
Hmm.
the plan was my husband went straight into the workforce, but I stayed at home for a little while just to keep an eye on the kids, make sure they settled in the school and that
Yeah,
all was well. And
yeah.
then after that, I started to look for work in the academic area because I had my PhD and I had some experience of doing tutoring and things while I was doing that. And I was able to use and I'm sure this doesn't surprise you in the slightest, my connections, my networking,
Mm,
which is always important in the tourism industry,
mm-hmm.
to connect with some people at Victoria University in Melbourne, particularly Professor Brian King, who was a former Strathclyde University graduate. So
Ah,
that was
right,
helpful in terms of getting in touch, and that's where I got my first academic job. It was just what we would call a research assistant, so just basically doing whatever work was available on a casual basis.
right.
And I did that for a while before a more permanent job popped up.
Right. Okay. So a couple of key takeaways here for listeners is that, as we've heard in podcasts before, your career is not siloed from the rest of your life by any means. Like if your husband's job is unstable and it means that you have to move to the other side of the world, then obviously your career has to ebb and flow with this. And yes, again, of course, using your networks and putting yourself out there and yeah, leveraging the people that you've met
It's so
in
important.
order. It's and yeah, I've said this a lot, but I'm sure it's the same in many industries, but it is more important than anything career wise, in my opinion, in my experience, for the tourism industry. Like
Yeah,
it's
totally agree. And I think it's
yeah,
because the industry is so diverse
yeah,
that you make contacts with people in so many different areas of the tourism industry, which then allows you to talk to people one day who are in events, the next day they're at the airport, the day after that they're in hotels, then they're in government and public policy, and it's just so wide. I
yeah.
kind of That's where the difference is between the tourism industry and some other types of occupation or other sort of economic sectors.
Yeah, well, that's so true. And, as you've highlighted already, we're all like that. Our careers are all like that. We're all bouncing
Mm.
around and moving from
Yes.
one sort of subsector of the tourism industry to another. And not only that, but geographically as well, we are not perhaps as bound
Agreed.
as some people that are more in a more structured industry, I suppose. I don't think I've had a single podcast guest so far that has only lived and worked in one country. It's just,
Yeah, no, I wouldn't be at
or
all
in,
surprised.
yeah.
And it's a real plus as well, and
Yeah, yeah,
something that talk to our students a lot about is,
yeah,
if you qualify as a lawyer in Queensland, you can only practice law in Queensland.
yeah,
If you qualify as a teacher in Queensland, you teach in Queensland. You have to go and
yeah.
apply for others, other certification or recognition of your qualifications before you can
Mm.
even teach anywhere else in Australia. Whereas if you qualify with tourism, hotel management, something like that, you can work anywhere in the world.
Yeah, that's so true, Judith. I hadn't thought about it like that before. Yeah, yeah, that is so true. Um, all right, great. So let's pop back to your career. Right. So research assistant.
Was lucky enough to get a position as a postdoctoral research fellow in Victoria University. So it was a university scheme, and so it was a 2-year contract just to do research. And I picked as my research topic something that flowed on from my PhD, which had been about conferences and conventions.
Good. Thank
So
you. Yes, I
my
was going to ask you about that.
postdoctoral fellowship was about the impacts of sustainability and climate change for conference and events, for business events generally. And that was quite a long time ago, 2008, 2009. And it wasn't really something that a lot of people were talking about at that stage. So
Right.
I guess and a lot of my work since then has been about sustainability and trying to understand events and sustainability. And that's kind of where it came from.
Judith, so if that sort of wasn't the hot topic that it kind of has evolved to be these days, why was that on your radar? Why did you choose that topic?
Um, well, lots of different reasons, but I
Mm,
sort of was initially interested, and it came back to the kind of discussions that you have over the dinner table at home. Was my husband, who worked for a big multinational corporation, talking about the fact that they were cutting down the number of sort of in-person business trips that their employees were doing, and were bringing in this new idea of video conferencing, which back then was still relatively new, not particularly reliable either.
mm.
But I kind of thought even back then, gosh, that's going to make a big difference to the tourism industry because of the number of people who travel for business. And if we see a big difference in the number of people who are no longer traveling for business meetings, what does that mean for the industry? And I guess that's kind of where I started, although I ended up getting more interested in the more about the psychology and the behavior of people when they choose to attend business events. But yeah, so that's where it started from.
Wow. Okay. Dinner table conversation.
Yeah.
That's true. It's just life, isn't it? Like we are our careers and yeah, we are one and the same. And I have so many questions that I really want to ask about that, but I'm going to not. But I would like to come back to is now a good time maybe to touch on what you found or, what your research found? Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah, maybe we can
So
do that because I'd love to
yeah,
hear.
I've been looking at events and sustainability for, as I say, quite a long time now,
Mm,
probably um, getting on for nearly 20 years. Much as I'd
mm,
rather it wasn't quite as long as that. And I guess sort of over time, the patterns of what's important to people are shifting. And I
mhm,
think that's interesting. That initially events, particularly business events, were seen as drivers of economic impact. So we bring in a big conference and we'll get lots of people and they'll spend money. And in order to bring in the big conference, we need to build the big convention center.
mhm.
And it was very much a financial transaction and an economic impact model. And that's important. I wouldn't try to suggest it's not, but I think over time people have started to become more interested in initially the environmental impacts. So the environmental impacts of massive convention centres as buildings and bits of infrastructure themselves, the environmental impacts of all the people that travel in order to attend business events. And latterly, I've been looking at all types of events, mega events and festivals and everything. And also how the environmental impacts might or might not change people's attendance behavior. So are people more interested in traveling somewhere that has strong environmental policies, for example, or are people not traveling as much? So in the academic world, there's a bit of a trend for universities to restrict the amount of conference travel, for example, that academics do. And partly there's a financial motive, but it's also partly to do with reducing the carbon emissions and making their ESG reporting a little bit better. So that's kind of the environmental side. And then the bit that I find most interesting, but hardest, is the social impacts.
Mm-hmm.
So looking at how, and this probably applies more to the mega events like the Olympic Games, but really to all events, is the local communities that live in the cities and the towns that host these big events are generally the ones that have to deal with the negative social impacts, whether that's traffic, crowding, noise, congestion, all these kinds of things, or, if it's a big festival, a bit of antisocial behavior perhaps. But very few people have looked at how we can use these events to have positive impacts on communities. In terms of giving local people volunteering opportunities that they can put on their resume, where they don't have a lot of work experience, or upskilling people in administration or in first aid, or, something like that, where you're actually contributing back to the local economy. And then there's also just the extremely intangible things about events, which are, people describe it as like the vibe. When there's a really big event in town, the vibe was great, which is, it's completely accurate and is completely impossible to measure. I guess that's what I'm interested now in, is how can we start looking at ways to say that this is a benefit of events, and it's something that we can actually calculate and point to, rather than just saying it brings in money.
Yeah, I think you need a vibometer. I think this is
Well, that could work.
Yeah.
If you've got one, that could work.
I don't, but yeah, well, this is, I just want to go down so many rabbit holes, but I'm not going to. But I will just say that, after having lived just out of Hobart for the last 6 years, and experiencing, winter and what the Dark Mofo Festival can do for a city. And, I worked for Destination Southern Tasmania, who spearheaded the Paint the Town Red campaign, which was part of, or ran alongside Dark Mofo, and that all the buildings would, light up red in support. And it was giving me goosebumps thinking about it, in the deep depths of winter, to drive through Hobart, and it's dark at 5 o'clock. And so you're leaving work for the day and you start to see the buildings light up. And you start to see all the stuff sort of popping up around town. It's definitely a vibe.
It is.
Yeah.
It's things like pride, identity, belong, but they, again, are very difficult things to actually categorize.
Yeah. Vibometer, Judith. You can have that idea.
Okay.
Yeah. Note that down.
Yep.
Oh, sorry. Try and have a serious conversation. I do.
Where's the fun in that?
Yeah. There's plenty of other serious places in the world. It's just not one of them.
Totally.
All right. So that was a 2-year timeline for you to yeah, okay. And so what happened after that?
After that, I did some work for Victoria University as a lecturer. So that was my first position, where I was actually in the teaching side of things, as opposed to just the research side of things.
Right.
And then a job popped up at Monash University in Melbourne. And so I went for that and got that. And that was sort of, that was like a grown-up job, if you know what I mean. It was full-time, lecturing and taking responsibility for developing the units and for all the assessment. So that was, it was a big jump, I guess, in terms of the amount of responsibility, but I really enjoyed it.
Yeah.
I really enjoyed teaching.
And you do. How did you find that transition into teaching?
into the actual teaching itself I didn't find difficult. And I think a lot of people in tourism have got the kinds of personalities where they're happy to talk, to chat, and they're happy to, talk about examples of when this happened or when that happened. So the standing up in class and trying to bring the teaching material to life with examples, I came quite naturally. I guess the harder part is the administration and the paperwork and the marking and things like that.
Yeah.
Not so fun.
The good stuff.
Yeah.
What year? Can you put timestamp this? Where are we
So
in?
that was 2010 that I moved
2010.
to Monash, and I
Monash.
stayed
Okay.
at Monash. I became a senior lecturer after a couple of years at Monash, and stayed there till 2014. And then I moved up to Brisbane. The main reason for that was because I wanted to go and work for University of Queensland, which had a really good reputation in terms of academic output and research. It's a very research-intensive university, and
Right.
Monash is quite research-intensive too. But I felt that I wanted to get into, I suppose, to get into a critical mass of people, because UQ and still has one of the biggest sort of groups of faculty teaching in the tourism, hospitality and events area.
I think Queensland pretty much has the biggest group of anything related to tourism.
Quite possibly, yes. They take it quite seriously up here.
Yeah. Yeah. Lots of good stuff happens in the tourism industry in Queensland. Lots of good stuff
really
happens in every state and territory, but there is, as you said, a critical mass in Queensland.
Yeah.
Okay, so you went up there and you secured a job with the University of Queensland.
Yes.
Yeah.
So I stayed with the University of Queensland for about 10 years. I became an associate professor while I was there, and I did quite a few sort of what I found very interesting things, different projects, research, sort of service. So, within academia, we talk about a service component of your workload, which is it can be things like attending committees, not attending committees, right? Serving on committees.
Yep.
Actually, doing something, not just attending. But also external engagement with industry partners, journal reviewing. So the entire, academic publishing industry requires peer review. And so there's all that kind of thing that fits in. And then with your teaching, that's another sort of component. And then your own research is sort of the final component. So I learned a lot there about everything, research, teaching, and all the service type things.
Yeah, I just will add in here, if anyone, I wanted to ask you about academia, but I'm not going to because I've had a previous conversation with Anne Hardy where she kind of pulls apart the life of academia. So if anyone is interested in knowing more about what that looks like, I won't put you through having to explain it to me as well, Judith,
No
but
problem.
I can refer to the conversation I've had with Anne Hardy, because it is, in my opinion, the research is so important for the tourism industry. But for somebody like me who spent their life working in the industry and has had no exposure to academia or very little, it sometimes can be like you're talking another language or speaking another language.
Yeah. There's definitely an issue with making the research accessible to as wide an audience as you possibly can.
Yeah, some of it is just so incredibly relevant. Well, I'm sure a lot of it is so incredibly relevant, but could be if it was easily digestible and readily readily available. I believe that our tourism operators could really benefit from being able to access it and understand it and implement it in their businesses.
And I might just jump in there and say, just as a bit of an aside, that I'm part of a group called the Centre for Events and Festivals, CEF.
Okay.
And CEF is intended to try to overcome some of that in the event space. So it's a group of industry practitioners and academics who try to make sure that whatever research we do in academia is sort of made into an accessible format. And we've got, I don't know how many, there's a board of practitioners and a board of professors. I'm on the board of professors, but it's about making the academic research in events accessible to events practitioners.
That sounds fabulous.
For anyone's interest,
Yeah. I'll
Google CEFs
definitely,
for events and
yeah,
festivals.
I'll definitely link to it in the show notes, Judith. So
Thank you.
that's, yeah, because, yeah, we need something like that for tourism.
I think so. Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, we definitely do. All right. So 10 years at UQ.
Yeah.
And then you're obviously not at UQ anymore. So what what does that transition look like?
So after spending such a long time in that research intensive environment, and I did enjoy the research element of it, I just felt that I did not get to spend very much time as a teacher. And I had particularly in the latter stages of my time at UQ, I had a couple of service roles. One of them was discipline leader, and that essentially meant additional administrative responsibilities, which were and the reduction to compensate for that came out of teaching. So I actually didn't do very much teaching in the last few years at UQ, and I kind of thought I enjoyed teaching, and I felt I missed it a bit. So that was part of it. And then when I saw the opportunity, so I'm currently with the Hotel School Australia at Southern Cross University, and it just does things differently. It's a different mindset here than UQ, partly because UQ is an enormous institution with, I think, 50,000 students or some vast amount like that. And then, Southern Cross is much smaller. It's a regional university. It's very much about tailoring the education to meet the needs in the regions. And tourism is so important in the regions of Australia that, I kind of thought that was something I could really get behind.
Okay, so what is your current role for my listeners at Southern Cross?
So I possibly have the longest job title in the university. I am the Academic Director and Associate Dean Education for the Hotel School Australia at Southern Cross University.
Well, bravo.
I know, sounds good. Yeah, so there's really two elements to that. There's the Academic Director part of it, and then there's the Associate Dean part of it. They involve the same sort of work, but the director reports to the rest of the staff at the hotel school. It's about making sure that the staff are across what I'm doing and what policies are. And the other half is the Associate Dean Education, is where I basically report back to Southern Cross and let them know what the hotel school are up to. So it's very much a liaison role. It's almost entirely taken up with curriculum quality. So
Right.
it's making sure that we're teaching the right things, that we're teaching them at the right levels, that we're including the right content that's relevant to industry, but is pitched at the right level for, whichever level the student's at. We do all the way from a 1-year diploma in global hotel management, all the way up to a master's degree and everything in between. So a big part of it is making sure that the content is pitched at the right level to meet we have to meet the Australian quality framework. I should know what that stands for, AQF.
Yeah.
Different AQF levels, depending on what the diploma or course program that the students are learning.
Right.
I take part in the Industry Advisory Board. I sit on that with our Dean of the hotel school, and that's where we run our curriculum by our industry, get some advice on what's still current, what needs to be changed, what might be coming up that we can look to incorporate into our teaching going forward. So it's I find it it's a very important role.
Yeah.
And I feel that, because of that, I feel that I get great value from it.
Yeah. So for my listeners, I came across Judith recently when I was at a industry lunch at the hotel school, well, hosted by the hotel school here in Perth. And Judith, you presented to the audience about your curriculum and how the program is designed. And I was swept off my feet by how the hotel school has sort of embodied sort of bending and flexing to meet the needs of the modern student. And I haven't seen anything like that in another tertiary education provider in our tourism and event space. So if it's all right, would you spend a couple of minutes sort of recapping that? Not
Sure.
that I want it to be a plug for the hotel school, but I was genuinely that's why I'm sitting here talking to you, because I was very impressed by it. So yeah, I'd love for my listeners to sort of hear a highlight reel of what I heard and how the hotel school is different and really does sort of meet the needs of the students.
Great. Well, thank you, and I'm really glad you enjoyed that presentation. It's something we do across Australia at various industry gatherings, and it is almost always met with, a really good reception. It's just very different. So in the hotel school, we teach in the Southern Cross model, which is part of what makes us different, and I'll talk to you about that in a second. And we also have extremely close links with the tourism and hospitality industry, which means that when it comes to placements and work integrated learning, we can offer a really good opportunities or, really good products for our students. So if I start with the way that Southern Cross teaches, instead of having 2 semesters a year, which is quite common, or even 3 trimesters, which some higher education institutions choose to use, we have 6 terms. So each term is 6 weeks for the students. But instead of asking the students to perhaps have to choose 4 subjects per semester, which is kind of standard in higher education, we have them do only 2 subjects for 6 weeks. So it's much more of a block model. It's like an intensive approach to teaching. It helps the students to reduce the cognitive load. And by that, we mean that when you're let's say you have a normal traditional semester and you're trying to do 4 units across, or 4 subjects across that semester. You have 4 lots of content, you have 4 lots of assessment that's all due at different times, and it all gets a little bit much sometimes for students to keep track of everything. So we cut that down in half. It's the same amount of academic content. We haven't changed that. It's just that it's more intensive for 2 subjects for 6 weeks. The other thing that we do is, because we offer 6 terms, students will still only do 4 subjects in a year, which is the same as they would do anywhere else. They can choose when and where to do those subjects, because we teach most of them multiple times a year. So, for example, they might come in term 1, which starts in March. They might do 2 units. In term 2, they might do 1 unit. In term 3, they might take a term off. In term 4, they might do their final unit, and then term 5 and term 6, they can take off. Or if they want to, they can do 1 in each of they can do 1 in 4 of the 6. So the amount of flexibility, and just purely in terms of the actual learning and when you do that, I think is something that, and that's across Southern Cross, that's not just a hotel school. But it's something that seems to help students, and it's helped a lot of the metrics at Southern Cross that they were trying to improve. Things like retention rate, things like helping students who are from lower socioeconomic backgrounds, students from First Nations families, students who are first in family to go to university, students from non-English speaking backgrounds. So all these different groups have all been supported and seem to be thriving across Southern Cross from this flexible way of learning.
Yeah.
Within the hotel school, there's another couple of things that we do with the timetabling. So almost always we timetable our courses and our subjects on a Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday, because we know that hospitality workers are far too busy on Fridays, Saturdays, and Sundays to be doing study. And also on Monday, usually that's when they have a little bit of time, or a little bit of, maybe a day off. They're more likely to get a day off on a Monday. So that's when we would maybe think that they could be doing some of their academic studies. So in that sense, it's quite flexible for the students to study when they want, and also try not to get in the way of the part-time work that most of our students are doing.
Yeah.
And then I guess the other thing that we do is we run mandatory internships. Now, if you do the diploma, which is the 1 year, there's no mandatory internship. And if you do a graduate certificate or graduate diploma, which are also 1 year at the postgraduate, they don't have mandatory internships. But the associate degree and the bachelor's degree and the master's degree do. And for each of those programs, it's 600 hours, which is more than many of our sort of other higher education institutions can offer. And we almost always, I'm going to say 99% of the time, we get internships for our students that are paid. So they are doing, and it's an internship, it's a placement, because it has academic supervision, and there's assessments that they do throughout that time, reflecting on their workplace and things that happened. But it's paid because we work so closely with the hotels and the operators, that they will come to us and say, okay, we've got, we need somebody in front of house. Have you got any students ready for internship? And so they will come, they'll do their internship, they'll be paid for it because they're doing a job that the hotel or the operator needs someone to do. At the same time, they're still getting all the other, sort of benefits that you get of an internship, which is about learning more stuff, broadening your networks, getting experience. So I think those two things, combined, the way we teach and the way we run internships, is probably what makes the hotel school a bit different.
Yeah, and it just seems so beautifully curated for the industry. Like you just said, the fact that majority of classes are on Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. Like it just seems that everything is really thought out, which
Yeah, we try.
is yeah, it's very, very refreshing, and mutually beneficial for the students and also for the industry to have access
Absolutely.
to those easy
So
access to
many.
those students.
What
Yeah,
we often do, especially with the bachelor students, is that we put the internships as their two final units that they study with us, so that if they are enjoying where they are and they're doing well, they can just stay.
yeah,
And that happens so often, is that we'll have the students who'll contact us and say, yeah, I've been made permanent, or, I've quite often even I've got a promotion because they've already
yeah,
got, such a lot of experience that they're, as soon as they graduate, they don't not just have a job, but they're actually moving up into team
yeah.
supervisory positions. So
Yeah. Well, I
this
guess then
works
by
really
that
well
point,
for,
they've got the experience and then they've also got the qualifications, if they're
yeah,
doing it at the end. Yeah, that's yeah, I think that this is a fantastic model. And
thank you.
like I said, I was really blown away by it. So thank you for going a little bit more in depth into that for my listeners. And of course, I'll put links to the hotel school in the show notes. Right. So that brings us to where you are now in your life and career, Judith. You're so perfectly placed to maybe offer a few words of advice or encouragement or reflection to listeners about, what you've experienced in your career and what you're seeing in the industry and anything else that you feel like could be useful.
I mean, I guess one of the things I do feel quite strongly about is that when you first become a mother or a parent, but it does tend to happen more often to mothers, um, you have this break in your career. And I guess it's worrying, and it was for me, and I'm sure it is for lots of people, because you don't know what's going to happen. But I think, looking back, my sort of advice or my thoughts would be that it it will still happen.
Mm,
You might take a year out, you might take 2 years out. It doesn't mean that, you're then relegated to doing something
mm,
you don't want to do. You might have to think about how you approach things a little bit differently, but I know so many really strong career women who are also mothers and who have also struggled, in that sort of immediate period when the kids arrive, with, "Gosh, I can't go back to work straight away," or, "I do go back to work straight away, but I worry because my kids are in, childcare," whatever.
yeah.
And I think part of it is just, and the benefit of hindsight and the benefit of being able to reflect is that it did mean no harm whatsoever. It changed what I ended up doing,
Yeah.
but that's okay. I'm okay with that. And I think a lot of people probably would also be okay with a change in direction. Um,
Yeah.
it's, it wasn't, I didn't downgrade in any
No,
sense. I don't feel that
no,
I
good
had
God.
to downgrade, but,
No.
I think it's important that that message gets out there, that maybe your career will change a little bit as a result of parenthood, but it can be a wonderful opportunity to
Mm,
go in a slightly different direction.
and I think it's also a lovely way to highlight for people that aren't necessarily familiar with the tourism industry or sort of looking at it from with a young person's eyes, is that there's more to the tourism industry than being a tour guide or having to be some sort of
Yeah,
front facing
absolutely.
weekend working, evening working.
Mm,
There's such a
yeah,
diversity of roles out there that can support a transition into motherhood or parenthood.
yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
absolutely. And I guess in terms of what's coming up, something that I think is worrying people, is the amount of AI that we're seeing. And it's certainly an interesting challenge for us as educators to work out how to actually assess people's ability to have learned anything, but that's not something I'll go into at the moment because that is a work in progress.
My goodness.
But I think the tourism industry and hospitality generally, I think, is one of the best places to be because it runs on people. So we might automate some back of house things. And maybe it will be some automation of business processes in the background. And maybe, I know some places do have check-in kiosks or, some kind of AI check-in. So there's potential, I think, for maybe some reduction in some of the jobs. But at the end of the day, hospitality is about providing a service to a person or a group of people. And it's the humanity of that makes the experience. And is, I think, even more important in service recovery. So if the check-in kiosk stops working, you want a person to jump out immediately. You want a person that you can say, hey, this has happened. And that person can say, I'm so sorry. Let me fix it. Let
Yeah.
me do this for you. And that's, I think, where the humanness, you might call it the hospitableness of the workforce, that can't be replaced.
No.
It just can't. And maybe, maybe you move to another kiosk and it spits out a little thing that says, oh, sorry, come to me instead, but it's not the same.
No, it's not the same. And, I'll leave your very well put thoughts there because otherwise I'll just send us out on another tangent. But yes, that's very much my stance, is that there is a level of AI proofness to the industry as a whole. And you're right, certainly certain aspects of the industry can be automated by AI. And look, let's be honest, great. Like if your accounting can be automated and your business processes can be automated, then great.
Yeah.
That gives us all some more space to be creative about our visitor experience and, how our teams perform to provide memorable visitor experiences, because we know that that's what travelers want. They want connection to place, and that is through the people and the food and the music and the nature in a place.
All the sort of sensual things, the things that appeal to your senses.
Yeah. All right. I think that's a beautiful place to end there, Judith, unless you have anything else any more little nuggets you'd like to
No, I think good. Thanks.
spurt out. All right. Well, thank you once again for being here with me today. I will pop your LinkedIn handle into the show notes if people would like to connect with you, if you're happy with that. And of course, I'll link to the hotel school. And thank you once again. This has been a really lovely conversation. It's so nice to hear what your journey has been. And I look forward to following you into the future and seeing what happens next.
Thank you so much, Carmen.
No worries. Thank you.